Mom, don't take this the wrong way, but the inheritance is basically already mine. My son said that at my dining room table. He said it while chewing the pot roast. I had cooked in the same blue roasting pan his father bought me, 46 years earlier. I remember the sound of his fork touching the plate. I remember the kitchen clock ticking over the doorway. I remember my granddaughter, Lily, looking down at her napkin as if she had heard something she was not supposed to hear. My name is Margaret Whittaker. Most people call me Maggie. I was 72 years old when my only son, Brian, decided my life had become a waiting room for his future. His wife, Alison, sat beside him with her hands folded around a folder. She had printed a label for it in neat black letters. Mom's transition plan. That was the first thing that made my stomach tighten. Not Mom's wishes. Not questions for Mom. Not things to discuss. A plan. Already named, already printed, already waiting for me to catch up. Alison slid it across the table after dessert, right past the little glass dish of peppermints. I always kept out, because Brian used to sneak them as a boy. We don't want this to feel sudden, she said softly, but we do think it's time to start being practical. Practical. That word can wear a nice dress and still carry a knife. Inside the folder were brochures for senior apartments, a suggested listing price for my house, a spreadsheet titled Projected Estate Use, a note about reducing Brian and Alison's home equity loan after the sale of my property. My property. My home. The house where Thomas and I had raised Brian. The house where I had learned how quiet a room could be after a husband died. The house where I still knew which floorboard creaked near the pantry and which window stuck when rain came from the west. Brian leaned back in his chair, trying to sound patient. Mum, don't get emotional. The inheritance is basically already mine. We're just trying to make sure you don't waste it before things get complicated. No one moved for a second. The porch light had just flicked on outside. It made a yellow square on the dark window behind him. I could see my own reflection faintly in the glass. Grey hair, blue cardigan, wedding ring still on my finger, still there, still alive, still the owner of the house he was already dividing. I wanted to say 100 things. I wanted to ask him when my life had become a complication. I wanted to ask Alison how long she had been making spreadsheets about my absence. I wanted to ask my son whether he heard himself. Instead, I folded my napkin. I looked at the folder. Then I looked at Brian. I see, I said. That was all. I stood up, cleared the plates, and carried Thomas's roasting pan to the sink. I washed it by hand, because I had never trusted the dishwasher with it. The blue enamel had a small chip near the handle from the year Brian dropped it while trying to help me clean up after Thanksgiving. He had been 14 then. He had cried because he thought I would be angry. I kissed his forehead and told him, things can chip and still be useful. That night, standing at the sink, warm water running over my hands, I realized people can chip too. But useful is not the same as owned. When everyone left, Brian kissed my cheek like nothing had happened. Alison reminded me to read the folder carefully. Lily lingered at the door, her backpack over one shoulder. She whispered, "Grandma, I'm sorry." I touched her cheek. "You didn't say it, sweetheart." She looked toward her parents' car. "No," she said, "but I heard it." After their headlights disappeared, I locked the door and stood in the quiet hallway. On the sideboard, beneath Thomas's old brass lamp, sat a blue binder. Thomas had made it before he died. Deed, trust, insurance, bank papers, medical forms, everything in order. I had not opened it in almost 2 years. That night, I placed my hand on top of it. And for the first time in a long while, I did not feel sad. I felt clear. Brian had not always sounded that way. That is what made it hard. People like to imagine betrayal arrives, wearing a red coat and ringing a bell. Most of the time it comes in slippers. It sits at your table. It uses your good plates. It calls itself concern. After Thomas died, Brian came every Sunday for almost 3 months. He fixed a loose gutter. He replaced the bulb above the basement stairs. He took the trash cans to the curb without being asked. Back then, I thought grief had made him tender. Maybe it had, for a little while. Then life returned to him faster than it returned to me. Brian owned a small contracting business. For years, he did well enough. Not rich, but busy. He had a truck with his name on the side, and a way of walking into a room like he knew how to fix whatever was broken. Then a city renovation contract fell through. I learned about it by accident. He and Alison had come over one afternoon to pick up Lily, and Brian took a call on my back porch. I was inside folding dish towels, the old yellow ones Thomas liked, because they dried glasses without leaving lint. The kitchen window was open. I heard Brian say, "No, I understand. I was counting on that job. I already ordered materials." Then a pause. Then quieter. "I'll find the money somewhere." When he came back inside, his face looked tired. I asked if everything was all right. He smiled too quickly. "Business stuff. Nothing for you to worry about." That was the first time I noticed the edge in him. A month later, Alison started mentioning tuition. Lily had been accepted into a college prep summer program, and Alison said it was an investment in her future. I agreed. I even paid half of it because Brian said cash flow was tight. Then came the home equity loan. Brian did not tell me directly. Alison did, while helping me put away groceries. She lifted a carton of eggs into the refrigerator and said, "It's just how families survive these days. You use what you have until the future catches up." I remember thinking it was an odd sentence. The future. That word came up often after that. In the future, this house will be too much for you. In the future, Brian will need to handle more. In the future, it makes sense for family assets to stay organized. Family assets. That was Alison's phrase. Not my savings, not my home, not Thomas's careful work. Family assets. The first small disrespect came the Christmas after Thomas passed. I had set out his chair at the table without thinking. Brian saw it and said, not unkindly but not gently either, "Mum, you can stop doing that. Dad's not coming." I told myself he was grieving differently. The second came when Alison asked if I could watch Lily after school. "Just for a few weeks," she said. It became 2 years. I loved Lily. That was never the problem. The problem was how quickly gratitude becomes expectation when no one is asked to count the cost. I bought snacks. I helped with homework. I drove her to piano. I kept a heating pad for her cramps and a little jar of quarters for school fundraisers. When Brian was late, I told Lily he was busy. When Alison forgot to text, I told myself she had a lot on her mind. The third came when Brian asked for money. He stood in my kitchen holding a coffee mug that said, "World's Best Dad," one Lily had given him. He did not look at me when he spoke. "It's just a bridge, Mom. 3 months, maybe 4. Business is slow. I'll pay you back." I wrote the check. He paid back a little, then stopped mentioning it. I stopped mentioning it too. That is one of the mistakes older mothers make. We call our silence kindness, when sometimes it is just fear dressed up as peace. I feared embarrassing him. I feared sounding cold. I feared becoming one of those women who made their children feel small over money. So I kept giving. Not just dollars. Time, meals, holidays, patience, excuses. When Brian began saying, "the property," instead of "your house," I told myself it was only wording. When Alison said, "At your age, stairs are a concern," I told myself she meant well. When Brian asked where Thomas had kept all the important estate stuff, I told myself a son should know such things. But each little moment had been a stitch. And by the night of the folder, They had sewn a whole garment around me, one I had never agreed to wear. The next morning, I found a corner of that garment under a placemat, a page Alison must have missed when she gathered her things. At first, I thought it was just another apartment brochure. Then I saw my address at the top. Under it were the words, Brian and Alison Whittaker Future Residence Concept. My hands went cold. There were notes about opening the wall between my dining room and kitchen, removing dated built-ins, replacing the carpet in the hallway. Then I saw the sunroom, Thomas's sunroom. The room he had built after he retired, with his own hands and a borrowed table saw from our neighbour Frank. The room where he drank coffee every morning and watched cardinals land on the feeder. The room where his chair still sat near the window with his bird book on the side table. Alison had circled it. Beside the circle, in her neat handwriting, she had written, Possible office. Remove older furniture. I sat down right there at the kitchen table. The house was not the only thing they had already divided. They had divided my memories too. I carried that page to the sunroom and sat in Thomas's chair. I did not usually sit there. For 2 years, I had dusted around it, straightened the cushion, picked up the bird book and put it back in the same place. But I rarely sat down. It still felt like taking something that belonged to him. That morning, I sat. The chair creaked in the familiar way. On the table beside me was his old pencil, worn flat on one side from the way he held it. Thomas had been an insurance claims adjuster for most of his working life. He believed in photographs, signatures, dates, and records. Not because he was cold, because he had seen what happened when people waited until trouble came to ask what the paper said. He used to say, "Love is what you feel, Maggie. Paper is what protects people when feelings get crowded." I used to tease him about it. Now I understood. I opened the blue binder. Thomas had labelled every section in his square, careful handwriting. House deed, trust, power of attorney, medical directive, banking, insurance, funeral. At the back was a sealed envelope I had seen before but never opened. It had my name on it. For Maggie, if you ever feel pressured. Not betrayed. Not abandoned. Not when Brian does this. Pressured. That was Thomas, careful even from the grave. He had not pretended to know the future. He had simply left me a door in case I needed one. I did not open the letter yet. Not that morning. I called Mr. Walter Callahan first. He had been our estate attorney for nearly 20 years. He was older than Brian, but younger than me, with silver hair and a voice that never hurried. Thomas trusted him because he explained things without making people feel foolish. His receptionist answered. Callahan Law Office. This is Margaret Whittaker, I said. I need to review my trust. She paused, only long enough to check the calendar. Mrs. Whittaker, Mr. Callahan can see you Thursday at 10. I looked at the renovation page in my lap. Is there anything sooner? There was a softer pause then. Let me ask him. 2 minutes later, she came back. He can see you tomorrow at 1. I thanked her and hung up. Then my phone buzzed. A message from Brian. Mom, sending something Alison found. Just a simple authorization form. It lets me help organize your accounts and talk to the bank if needed. We can go over it Sunday. Nothing serious. Below it was a PDF attachment. My thumb hovered over the screen. Nothing serious. That is how people hand you a rope and call it a ribbon. I opened the attachment. The first line said, Financial Information Authorization and Account Management Assistance. I read only enough to see that it would allow Brian to receive information about my accounts, speak with financial institutions, and help coordinate elder financial planning. Elder. I placed the phone face down on the table. I had thought the folder was the plan. Now I understood it was only the opening page. I called the bank. Not because I thought Brian had stolen from me. I did not want to make more drama in my mind than the facts could carry. But Thomas had taught me that checking is not accusing. Checking is breathing with your eyes open. The bank manager, Mrs. Helen Parker, had known me since Thomas was alive. When I asked whether anyone besides me had signing authority on my accounts, she pulled the records. "You are the only signer on the primary checking and savings," she said. "Your son is listed as emergency contact on the profile, but he is not a signer." I closed my eyes for 1 second. Can an emergency contact receive account information? No, ma'am, not without authorization. Can that be removed? Yes, you would need to come in with identification. I looked at Thomas's pencil on the side table. "I'll come tomorrow morning." Mrs. Parker's voice lowered slightly. "Mrs. Whittaker?" "Yes?" "Do not sign anything you have not reviewed with your attorney." There are sentences that do not sound dramatic, but still change the temperature of a room. I set the phone down and looked out at the maple tree in the backyard. Thomas had planted it the year Brian was born. Its branches were bare that morning. Winter makes honest shapes of trees. I thought the insult had been the wound. I had not yet seen the plan. At the bank, Mrs. Parker met me in a small glass office with 2 chairs and a box of tissues on the corner of the desk. I did not use the tissues. She printed a profile sheet and turned it toward me. "Your son is not on the accounts," she said. "No debit card, no signature card, no co-owner status." I nodded. "Remove him as emergency contact." She looked at me for a moment, not with pity, with respect. "Who would you like instead?" I had thought about that all night. My niece, Claire, lived 30 minutes away. She was Thomas's sister's daughter, a nurse practitioner with a calm head and a kind spine. She did not hover. She did not ask what things were worth. When Thomas died, she came over and cleaned my refrigerator without saying a word. "Claire Bennett," I said. Mrs. Parker typed. One false power ended with the sound of keys clicking. Then she asked whether I wanted text alerts for unusual withdrawals. Yes. Whether I wanted mailed statements to continue. Yes. Whether I wanted any account information restricted to in-person requests only. I looked at my hands folded over my purse. Yes. A record does not argue, it waits. Before I left, I showed Mrs. Parker the authorization form Brian had sent. She read it carefully. The way bank people read things, one line at a time. Then she looked up. This would not make him a co-owner, but it would give him access to information. In the wrong hands, information becomes pressure. I put the paper back into my purse. Then he will not have it. By the time I left, nothing dramatic had happened. No sirens, no raised voices. No one had been punished. But my son was no longer the first name attached to an emergency that involved my money. At 1 o'clock the next day, I sat across from Mr. Callahan, with the blue binder on my lap, Allison's folder on his desk, and Brian's authorization form paper-clipped to the front. He read in silence. He did not gasp. Good lawyers do not gasp. When he reached Brian's sentence as I had written it down, he removed his glasses and set them gently beside the paper. "Mrs. Whittaker," he said, "do you feel unsafe in your home?" I thought about that. Not physically. "Do you feel pressured?" I looked at the folder, at the apartment brochures, at the house estimate, at the renovation plan, at the authorization form Brian called "nothing serious." Yes. He nodded once. Not surprised, not dramatic, just recording the truth. We reviewed the deed first. He pulled the county record on his computer and turned the screen slightly. "You are the sole owner. There is no co-owner, no recorded claim, no lien from your son, and no transfer document." I stared at my name on the screen. Margaret Ellen Whittaker. Thomas had insisted on adding my middle name years ago when we refinanced, saying it should be exactly right. My name was not decoration on the deed. It was the answer. Then we reviewed the trust. The Whittaker Family Revocable Trust, created by Thomas and me, amended once after his death to reflect that I was the surviving trustee. Brian was listed as successor trustee. That meant if I became unable to manage things, or after I died, he would have authority. Not ownership while I was alive. Not permission to plan my move. Not a right to my checking account. Authority later, if I allowed the document to stay that way. Can I change it? I asked. Mr. Callahan looked at me directly. Yes, it is revocable. You are alive. You are competent. You are the current trustee. You may amend it. Alive. Competent. Current. 3 plain words. 3 locked doors opening. He explained my choices. Remove Brian as successor trustee. Name a neutral professional trustee. Name Claire as healthcare agent and financial power of attorney if I wanted. Create a separate education trust for Lily. Keep control of everything during my lifetime. Protect the house from being sold by anyone unless I chose to sell it. He spoke slowly. I asked questions. No one rushed me. Then he said something that made my throat tighten. Thomas came in about a year before he passed. He was worried. I looked up. About Brian? Mr. Callahan chose his words carefully. About patterns. He said Brian had begun assuming help before asking for it. He said you tended to give people the benefit of the doubt until it cost you peace. He did not tell me what you should do. He asked me to make sure you had options. I turned the wedding ring on my finger. Thomas had not predicted betrayal. He had noticed pressure. That was different. That was love, with its eyes open. I can prepare amendments, Mr. Callahan said. Only you can decide whether to sign them. Prepare them, I said. We made a list. First, revoke the old, durable financial power of attorney that named Brian as alternate after Thomas. Second, create a new one, naming Claire. Third, update the medical directive. Fourth, amend the trust to remove Brian as successor trustee and appoint a professional fiduciary. Fifth, update the final distribution schedule. That was the last page. Schedule C. The page Brian believed was already written in his favor. The page he thought had become a promise simply because he had waited long enough. I did not cut him out completely. That would have made the story simpler, but real life is not simple. Brian remained a beneficiary, but his share would be distributed in stages through the trustee. No lump sum, no control over the house, no authority over Lily's education money, no ability to pressure me into selling while I was alive. Lily's education trust would be funded directly and held until she turned 25, unless used earlier for tuition, books, housing, or training. If there were future grandchildren, they would be treated equally. A portion of the estate would fund the Thomas Whittaker Second Chance Scholarship for older women returning to school. That part was mine. I had spent 35 years watching mothers and grandmothers sit in the school office, ashamed to admit they wanted to finish a degree or start over. Thomas used to say, I taught half the town how to believe paperwork could be finished after life interrupted it. So I added it. Not to punish Brian. To give Thomas's careful life a generous ending. Mr. Callahan also suggested something practical. Because your son has already used language about you becoming emotional or complicated, I recommend a short competency letter from your physician. Not because I doubt you. Because it closes a door someone may try to open later. I almost laughed. Not because it was funny, because I heard Thomas in it. Close the door before the wind tests it. The next morning, my doctor asked me ordinary questions. Date, medications, recent bills, who was president, what I wanted changed and why. I answered. He wrote a brief letter stating that I appeared capable of understanding and making legal and financial decisions. I carried that letter back to Mr. Callahan's office in my handbag, beside a folded grocery list and a peppermint from the dish by my door. The notary came in at 3. I read every page. I signed my full name. Margaret Ellen Whitaker. Not Mom. Not Grandma. Not future estate. My name. The paper did not make me powerful. It reminded me I already had been. When I got home, a locksmith's van was waiting in the driveway. That may sound harsh, until I tell you that I had discovered my spare key was no longer under the ceramic frog on the back porch. Brian knew where it was. Alison knew where it was. I did not know who had taken it, so I changed the locks. Not because I hated them, because access is not love. The locksmith handed me 3 new keys on a small silver ring. "Need any copies made?" he asked. I held them in my palm. Not today. By sunset, the front door closed with a new sound, a firmer one. That night, I opened Thomas's letter. I made tea first. Chamomile, though I never believed it did much. I used his old mug, the brown one, with a crack near the handle that never leaked. I carried it to the sunroom and sat in his chair again. The envelope opened cleanly. Thomas had written 2 pages. His handwriting was weaker than it had been on the binder tabs, but still his. "Dear Maggie," it began. "I will not repeat all of it. Some words belong to the person who receives them. But I will tell you the part that held me still." He wrote, "If you are reading this with Walter, or before calling him, then someone has made you feel pressed into a corner. I do not know who. I do not know why. I only know you. You will try to understand them first. You will try to make peace. You will wonder if protecting yourself is the same as being selfish. It is not." I wiped my cheek with my cardigan sleeve. He continued, "I have watched you give people the benefit of the doubt until there was almost nothing left for yourself. Maggie, peace is not surrender. Love is not access. Family is not a blank signature. Ask every question, read every page, sign only what gives you rest." At the bottom, he had added one more line. "Do not let anyone speak about your life in the past tense while you are still living it." I folded the letter and held it in my lap. I cried then. Quietly. Not the broken kind of crying. The kind that comes when someone who loved you well has left a lantern on the table. Thomas had not saved me. I did not need saving. He had simply reminded me that I was allowed to open my eyes. For the first time since the folder appeared, I let myself feel the whole wound. Brian had not just wanted money. He had wanted me to agree that my remaining years were something to be managed around his needs. And I had almost called that practicality. I looked at the signed copies on the small table beside me. The trust amendment. The new power of attorney. The medical directive. The bank confirmation. The doctor's letter. The certified notices Mr. Callahan would mail the next morning. Everything ordinary. Everything legal. Everything clear. I did not become cruel. I became accurate. Before I went to bed, I put Thomas's letter behind the final page of the trust binder. Not as a trap, as a witness. Then I turned off the lamp and walked through my own house, touching the back of the sofa, the kitchen chair, the stair rail Thomas had sanded smooth. I was still here. That should not have needed proving. But now it was written. Brian called 3 days later. I knew Mr. Callahan's certified notice had arrived, because my son did not start with hello. "Mum, what is going on?" I was standing at the kitchen counter, slicing apples for a small pie. The recipe card was my mother's, stained with butter at the corner. I set the knife down before answering. "You received the notice?" "A legal notice, yes. From your lawyer, like I'm some stranger." "You are not a stranger, Brian." "Then why am I being removed from things?" I looked out the window over the sink. A squirrel was on the fence, fat and still. "Because you began treating access like ownership." He exhaled hard. "This is Alison's fault, isn't it? She pushed too hard. You know how organized she gets." There it was, the soft escape. Blame the wife, keep the son clean. I wiped my hands on a dish towel. Alison made the folder, I said. You said the sentence. Silence. Then, lower, Mom, I was trying to help. No, I said. You were trying to make official what benefited you. That's not fair. Fair would have been asking what I wanted before planning where I should live. He did not answer. Then Alison's voice came through faintly in the background. Ask her if she understands what she signed. I almost smiled. Not because I was amused, because I had expected that door. Tell Alison I understood every page. Alison came onto the phone then. Margaret, no one is taking anything. We are trying to help you stop holding on so tightly. There it was again. Soft words, hard meaning. I looked toward the sunroom. Holding on to my own life is not a symptom, Alison. Brian came back on. Mum, you're making this ugly. I looked at the blue binder on the kitchen table. No, Brian, I am making it clear. He wanted to come over. I said no. He insisted we needed to discuss it as a family. I said we could meet at Mr. Callahan's office on Tuesday at 10. He said, why can't we talk in your kitchen like normal people? I looked around that kitchen, the pot holders hanging by the stove. The rooster clock Lily always said was ugly. The little scratch on the table where Brian once pressed too hard doing math homework. Because you brought paperwork into my kitchen first, I said. Now mine gets a chair too. Tuesday morning, Brian arrived in a navy jacket I knew he wore when he wanted to look responsible. Alison came with a leather tote and a tight smile. Lily was not with them. I was grateful for that. Mr. Callahan seated us in his conference room. There was water on the table, a yellow legal pad, a box of tissues no one touched. Brian opened first. Mum, we all got off on the wrong foot. Alison's folder was just planning. We didn't mean to upset you. I folded my hands. I was not upset because there was a folder. I was upset because I was not treated as the person whose life was inside it. Alison leaned forward. Margaret, with respect, you are 72. These conversations are uncomfortable, but necessary. Then you should have had one, I said. Not made a plan and handed me my part. Brian rubbed his forehead. Can we please not make this emotional? I turned to him. Brian, you called my inheritance basically yours while I was sitting across from you. I am not the one who confused emotion with ownership. Mr. Callahan opened the binder. His voice was calm enough to cool the room. Mrs. Whittaker has amended her revocable trust. She remains sole trustee during her lifetime. She remains sole owner of the residence. No one may sell, list, transfer, mortgage, or otherwise control the property without her written consent. Alison's face changed first. Just a flicker. Brian looked at me. What does that mean? Mr. Callahan continued. You have been removed as successor trustee. You are no longer named as financial agent. Claire Bennett is named under the new power of attorney and health directive. A professional fiduciary is named as successor trustee. Brian sat back. Mom, not angry that time. Almost wounded. I let the word sit there. Some apologies need to be held before they can be answered. Alison spoke again. Does she understand that this affects family inheritance? Mr. Callahan slid a copy of the doctor's letter across the table. Mrs. Whittaker's physician has provided a written statement that she is capable of understanding and making these decisions. Alison's mouth closed. Then Mr. Callahan turned to the final page. Schedule C. The page Brian had never seen, but thought he owned. Upon Mrs. Whittaker's passing, the residence and remaining assets will be administered by the successor trustee. Mr. Whittaker remains a beneficiary, but distributions are staggered and trustee-controlled. Lily Whittaker's education trust is funded separately. Any future grandchildren are treated equally under the same terms. A portion funds the Thomas Whitaker Second Chance Scholarship. Brian looked at me. You put my daughter before me? That hurt. Even then, it hurt. No, I said. I put Lily beyond the reach of this argument. His jaw tightened. And me? I removed you from control, not from my life. There is a difference. Alison whispered, This is punishment. I turned to her. No, punishment takes something that belongs to you. These papers protect what never did. No one spoke for a moment. Mr. Callahan closed the binder. Brian's eyes were wet, though he would not let them fall. Dad would not have wanted this. That was the last door he tried. The old one. The sacred one. I reached into my purse and took out a copy of Thomas's letter. Not the whole letter, only the part I was willing to share. I placed it on the table. Your father did not tell me what to do, I said. He reminded me to ask questions before signing away my piece. Brian read the lines. His face changed slowly. Not enough to fix anything. Enough to know he had heard. He swallowed. I shouldn't have brought Dad into it. It was the first honest sentence he had said in that room. I nodded. No, you should not have. Alison looked away, toward the window. When Brian looked up, I said the thing I had come there to say. Alison may have made the folder, Brian, but you sat beside her while she handed it to me. You let her call my home future family use while I was still living in it. You let her ask whether I understood my own signature. That failure is yours. He looked down. Alison gathered her tote. I think we're done here. Yes, I said, we are. At the office door, Brian turned. Mum, can I still come by Sunday? For 49 years, my heart had answered that question before my mind could. This time I let both speak. Not this Sunday. His face tightened. I added, gently, I need my table to feel like mine again. He nodded once. Then he left. When I got home, I unlocked my new front door with my new key. The lock turned smoothly. That sound did not feel like anger. It felt like self-respect. Lily came the following Saturday. She did not call first. She texted, Can I come by? Just me. I don't want anything. That last sentence broke my heart a little. No 17-year-old should feel the need to say that to her grandmother. I told her yes. She arrived with a paper grocery bag and red eyes. Inside the bag were apples, cinnamon, and a pint of vanilla ice cream. I thought maybe we could make that pie, she said. So we did. She peeled apples at the kitchen table with the careful slowness of someone trying not to cry. I rolled out the crust. Flour dusted the sleeve of my cardigan. The house smelled like butter and cinnamon. And for a while we let that be enough. When the pie was in the oven, Lily sat across from me and picked at the edge of a napkin. Grandma, I heard Dad that night. I know. I wanted to say something. You are still a child in their house, I said. It was not your job to protect me from your parents. She swallowed. Mom said you're trying to take things away from us. I reached for her hand. I am trying to keep people from taking things away from me. She nodded, but tears spilled over then. I don't care about the house. I just like being here with you. There it was, the sentence that healed more than she knew. I squeezed her hand. That is why there will always be a place for you here. I did not tell her the details of the trust. She did not need to carry adult paperwork in her young heart. I only told her that her education would be protected, no matter what grown people argued about. She frowned. Does Dad know? He knows enough. Is he mad? I looked toward the hallway, where the blue binder sat on the sideboard again. Probably. Are you? I thought about that. I was. Then I got clear. Clear as quieter. Lily nodded as if she understood, or wanted to. After the pie cooled, she asked if we could sit in the sunroom. She had always liked that room. Thomas used to let her help fill the bird feeder when she was small, even though she spilled seed everywhere. She touched the back of his chair. Grandpa loved this room. He did. Mom said it would make a good office. I looked at her. She flushed. I told her it was Grandpa's room. I smiled then. A small, real smile. Thank you. We went outside before she left. The maple tree stood bare, but the soil near it was soft enough to work. I had bought lavender plants from the garden centre that morning, though it was early, and the woman there told me to keep an eye on the frost. Lily helped me plant them anyway. Her hands got dirt under the nails. Mine did too. Thomas would have liked that. Before she left, Lily hugged me for a long time. I love you, Grandma. I love you too. She pulled back. Not because of anything. I touched her hair. I know. That evening, Brian texted. Lily said she came over. I looked at the message while standing beside the stove, reheating soup in a small saucepan. I replied, "She is welcome here, always." 3 dots appeared. Disappeared. Appeared again. Then his answer came. Am I? I read it twice. Then I set the phone down and ate my soup before answering. Some questions deserve hunger to pass before they are handled. Later, I wrote, "You are my son. That door is not gone, but it is no longer unlocked." He did not respond that night. That was all right. Not every silence is punishment. Some silences are people meeting the truth for the first time. The weeks after that were not dramatic. Real consequences rarely arrive with thunder. Mr. Callahan sent written notices. The bank confirmed the account changes. Claire came by one afternoon, sat with me at the kitchen table, and reviewed what it meant to be my agent if I ever needed help. She did not ask what she would get. She asked where I kept my medication list. That told me I had chosen correctly. Brian stopped dropping by without calling because his key no longer worked. The first time he tried, I was home. I heard the old habit in the lock, then the pause, then the doorbell. I opened the door. He stood there holding a grocery bag. "I brought coffee," he said. I looked at the bag, then at him. "You can come in for 20 minutes. It was not forgiveness. It was a beginning with walls. He stepped inside and looked around the hallway as if the house had changed. It had not. The same family photos hung along the staircase. The same rug sat near the door. The same little dish held peppermints. Only the assumption had changed. He noticed the blue binder on the sideboard. "Is that it?" he asked. "Yes." He nodded. I didn't realize how bad that sounded. What I said, I let the sentence sit between us. It was not enough, but it was not nothing. "I hope someday you understand why it hurt," I said. He looked down. "I'm trying." Trying was not repair, but it was better than planning my life over pot roast. Then he said something else, quieter. "The business has been worse than I told you." I waited. He looked at the floor. I was scared. I kept thinking, if I could just get ahead of things, if I could just make a plan, then I wouldn't feel like everything was slipping. I folded my hands around my mug. Being scared does not give you permission to count what is not yours. He nodded. Not proudly. Not easily. But he nodded. Alison did not come in. She waited in the car. That told me things were not fixed. It also told me I did not need them to be fixed before I could be at peace. Over spring, Lily kept visiting. Sometimes for pie, sometimes for homework, sometimes just to sit in the sunroom and tell me about college applications. The scholarship paperwork arrived in a clean envelope from Mr. Callahan's office. I held it for a long time before placing it in the binder. Thomas Whitaker Second Chance Scholarship. I whispered his name when I read it. Not because he had saved me, because he had been careful. And because, in the end, I had been clear. One Saturday, I replaced Alison's renovation page with a photograph. It was an old picture of Thomas in the sunroom, holding baby Lily on his knee. She had one hand in his shirt pocket and the other around a cracker. On the back, I wrote the date. Then I added one sentence. This room was never empty. I tucked it into the binder behind Schedule C. The last page had been updated. So had I. On the first warm morning of May, I sat at my kitchen table with Thomas's brown mug, my mother's recipe box, and a small notebook I had started keeping after everything happened. Not a diary, exactly. More like a place to put sentences I did not want swallowed. The house was quiet. Not lonely. Quiet. There is a difference. The new keyring sat beside the sugar bowl. The blue binder rested on the sideboard under Thomas's brass lamp. Outside, Lily's lavender had survived the frost and was beginning to show soft green growth near the maple tree. I opened the notebook. For a while, I only listened. To the refrigerator humming. To a bird tapping somewhere near the gutter. To my own breathing in my own house. Then I wrote, "Sometimes dignity does not arrive with shouting." Under it, I added the line that answered everything Brian had said at my table. The inheritance was never basically his. My life was still mine. I closed the notebook and carried my mug to the sunroom. The morning light had settled over Thomas's chair, over the bird book, over the small table he built for my violets. I did not sit in his chair that day. I sat in mine. Outside, the lavender moved gently in the wind. And for the first time in a long time, nothing in my home felt like it was waiting for me to leave.